Welcome, everyone. We're here. I'm Nicole DiCristofaro, and I've got my co-host here, Sara, my biz bestie, biz partner, friend in all things, sister from another mister. And we're excited to talk to you today, building on what we discussed in last episode. And if you didn't watch it, last week we said branding isn't what you think it is. And this week we're going to go into the part that everyone skips and wonders why their messaging feels off. This is the identity, and it's the foundation of your brand. But before we jump in, we just want to share, if you love conversations like this, going deeper into the why of your brand, and it's not just the logo as we talked about last week, we invite you to check out the Archangels Collective, one of the cool places in the school community universe, where we have created this launch lab for women who are building visible, profitable businesses. And it's a place that Sara and I love because we get to talk strategy, give feedback, and offer some visibility support through, filtered through that lens of how you naturally need, not just some generic cookie cutter. Right, Sara?
Yeah, and I think it ties in great with what we're talking about today because what we touched on last time is how people jump to the visual part, which is actually the third layer out. And even what we're going to talk about today, which is because we cut it into the three parts, right? It's the identity, it's your positioning, messaging, and then it's the visuals in that order. And brand identity to me is like it is the core foundation. And it's not just, oh, who am I? I'm the friendly coach, right? I think that's where people
Mhm.
miss it. It's like, one, we don't know who we are usually at this stage and age of ourselves. So I 100% agree that it's a great tie-in and it's going to be really interesting because I really, as I said, I kind of get off on identity and you with archetypes and they blend so well. And if people can really connect to this, I really think it'll make their business just so much more fluid, more understandable, more resonant with people. So I'm excited for today's conversation.
Me too. So grab your favorite beverage and let's hang out for the next, I don't know, 30 minutes or
However
so.
long we talk.
However long it goes. You can always pause and come back. All right. So let's talk about, like, most people, Sara, don't know what identity is. Like, if I would ask anybody, I'm sure we get like 20 different answers. I feel like, and I'm going to ask you what you think identity means, and we talked about it last time, but I was thinking about it when Sara proposed, like, let's dig into identity. I was like, yeah, yeah, I love identity. I'm very passionate about it. But I feel like if I were to make it sound a little like poetic in the sense of like, really, I want to touch your soul with it. To me, it feels like that internal truth that drives everything external. What do you think about that? Them apples.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a nice deep layer of that for sure. And I think that's where people can get tripped up because I don't remember if we talked about it last time, but the branding part, which again being identity, is to me a personal transformation because most of us live in this like, who am I? Can I be this person? Is this like it's so uncomfortable? And I mean, even like we talk about in the collective, you see women stepping up and going, it's almost like they get permission to be themselves, which
Hmm.
you think you wouldn't need, and yet in today's it's so like we look online and there's people doing this way and should I be this and oh well this is trending. I'm like who you are, your identity is not a trend. It will change, it will grow with you, but it's not a trend. And Dolly Parton has my favorite line. It says, find out who you are, do it on purpose. I like to be her on purpose. And
Mm,
that to me is that identity is how do you peel back the layers of the false stories, the limiting beliefs, the identity that you've put on from past experiences of others, like who you grew up with, what they said you could be, what they thought, what was the right way to be as a woman, all these layers, and men too. I don't want to say men have their own
mhm.
stories too. And so when you can connect to being like, okay, first layer is like, who am I really naturally? And that's why we always talk about leading naturally. I believe
Mhm.
that really it is finding out if no, they say if nobody was watching, who would you be? Like, who are you
Yeah.
naturally? And let
Mhm.
that be what comes through. Stop trying to morph. And so it doesn't quite come out as poetically as yours, but it's something I find. I'm so passionate about because most people are so uncomfortable in their own skin. And that's what makes the whole business entrepreneurship really hard because you're trying to be somebody you're not or fit into what you think you should be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like when I've talked to many women in, just various phases of being an entrepreneur and a coach online, it's like I've always asked this question, what makes you you and not the 47 or 50 other coaches in your space? And sometimes people have a hard time with that. And that's again why I loved the archetypal lens, because when I discover it, I was like, oh, I get me more now. Like it was hard. It's like that metaphor they say in the coaching world, it's hard to see if you're shining a flashlight on yourself, but if a coach or something else isn't shining, they can see things for you.
Hmm.
And when I found out what my archetype is, the pattern of how I naturally show up, it's not a personality quiz, it's my visibility blueprint. That's where I was like, this is what I want to help people with. Ah, like it was the sea parted and I was walking through it. So yes, that's
Well, I think
all.
that's the path of many entrepreneurs too, right?
Yeah.
Most of us have walked through the dark cave of the soul, come out on the other side, and that's what we want to turn back and support. And the same for me, identity was my shift when I got to a certain point in life and was like, who am I? Like, I don't even recognize, like, what do I like? I didn't even know what I liked anymore at a certain point.
Hmm.
And when we can start to actually kind of peel back and connect, and again, this idea of there's this word, just permission, and it makes me so sad that people think they need permission to be who they are. But we're so afraid sometimes of like, well, what if I don't get likes, or what if I rub someone the wrong way? I can even fall into that pit. Sometimes with my posts, I'm like, I don't want to rock the boat necessarily, but I want to
Yeah.
say my mind. And so I can even sometimes hold back. But then stepping into that, who am I? Because brand identity is also not positioning in the sense of how you say it, but your tone and your voice is part of that
Yeah.
identity. Is how do you speak? How do you show up? How do you, what's your, I mean, you and I have very different cadences in how we speak and
Yeah.
connect, right? And that's part of that
Yeah.
identity.
Before we go into the pieces of brand identity, though, I have a couple things, like a question, because I think like I love when we ask each other questions. So why do you think people skip this step of, understanding their identity?
One, I think a lot of people don't even realize they don't know who they are. It just becomes habit, right? Like
Hmm.
my parents were like this, I've been around this, this is who I am. And it's second, it's really uncomfortable to be
Hmm.
honest as all get up with yourself and be like, wait a second,
Yeah.
what am I trying to accomplish here? Who am I? And because there's, and we talk about it even in the archetypes, right? The shadow part of the archetype, and there in everything we step into. I mean, there's the generic answer of like, because the
Hmm.
branding, imaging, visual part is more fun too.
Yeah.
But I also think the way they teach it, because that is the more fun part, that's quite often where people focus. The other ones are
Yeah.
deep transformation and they get skipped over. But even as someone who's moved and been in mindset and in personal development coaching, it's like you're get ready to cry, get ready to see things, get ready to
Yeah.
let go of things. And not everybody is always like they don't see the business and the self kind of
Yeah.
combined. That's
Yeah.
my kind of
I think so too. I think it feels either too introspective or woo. Like they're like, I don't need to go that deep. I think some people do think they know who they are. There's the people who don't know who they are, but they think they know who they are, but they can't really say it in two sentences. As Sarah and I have seen in other communities, that's very tricky place to be. And then, like you said, they jump straight into, this is what I want my brand to look at like, and this is how I want it to this fun colors, this, and they don't even know what the brand should say actually
yeah,
first.
yeah.
So, and then when I started teaching, I started doing the workshops with the archetypal lens and having people do these like brand essence boards. This is what I found all the time, Sarah, and it's so funny because it kind of happened when you and I were talking about your archetypal mix. they were like, "Oh, I want to be that archetype instead." Like people were like disappointed because they thought they should be the rebel when they were actually the sage, or and they wonder why, though, if they were trying to be that type of archetype and they really weren't, then they wonder why, oh, that feels a little forced or not really me, because it's like wearing the too tight jeans metaphor. So
Well, I think
Sarah
it's a
can
great
speak to
question too,
that.
because
Yeah.
if someone jumps into the colors, because part of the brand identity is the why, your I
Yeah.
believe, right? Like that is the
Yeah.
nucleus of it. So if you, let's say you do try and skip over everything, you're like, oh, the rebel, ask yourself why? Why is that the
Uh-huh.
brand you want? Because it could open some reflection. Because if you can't answer and you're just, well, because I think it's cool or I think this is
Yeah.
trending, that's probably not the
Not.
deeper
Yeah.
100%,
Totally.
100%.
Before we get to those pieces of brand identity, I have one more question.
Yes.
So the identity clarity test that I kind of think about, and you could probably add, is like I always like to ask people, can you describe your brand in 3 words that aren't these like fluffy words like authentic, passionate, innovative? Like that really means nothing to me as far as like if to me to understand your brand. So I like to say, if someone saw your content with no name attached, would they know it's yours? And that's like a really good, like, do you have clarity on your identity? You said it too, like, do you sound like yourself or like other people? Does it match your energy, right? So, what other things that, like, do you think, because you just had a good question about like kind of asking yourself, what other things would be a good identity clarity test that you think someone could ask themselves?
Well, I mean, I think just there's two ways. You can ask yourself or you can ask your friends. You can be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
when you're with me or when we've engaged, like what are words that come to mind?" Because it is very hard for us to kind of put them on ourselves and just be like, "I think
Hmm.
I'm this."
Hmm.
And so that is a great, it's very uncomfortable. Most people don't like it, but if you can kind of, we're always looking to stretch ourselves and move out of our comfort zone. If you can ask, I think that's great. But I also think like if you can, again, self-reflect and be like, when I'm in a quiet moment with, if you have children, when your children come to you, or if you're bestie, what is that energy that you are kind of hitting? Because if I look at myself, it was really interesting. And sometimes even just in comments, because we were going out for dinner the other night with some girlfriends and I couldn't make it. And they're like, well, we're going to cancel. I'm like, why would you cancel? Just go, have fun. No, Sarah, but you bring a real energy
Yeah.
to the experience and we feed off of that. And I was like, oh, like I never would, I just make dumb jokes, I'm like, but so it's a really interesting. So that would be my thing is can you sit for a few minutes, honestly? And if you're having trouble, then turn to people you trust and be like, hey, when you think of me, what are words that naturally come to mind? And that can kind of help
Yeah.
give you
Definitely.
new perspectives of who you are and own that shit. Like, I don't know if we're allowed
Yeah.
swearing on YouTube, but anyways.
Yeah, no, I've loved giving that task to people, and then coming back and going, "Oh my God, I didn't know people saw me this way." And like it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Like it's one of those breakthrough moments. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely. So, pieces of brand identity, definitely what Sarah just mentioned, the experience people have when they interact with you. Like, some of the like we designed the arc print quiz in a way where it does bring that out, like it asks you certain questions. And, if you're someone that makes people feel safe, seen, maybe you challenge people, that's the archetype showing up in you. So I think it's the easiest way to explain this kind of concept. The other piece of brand identity would be your voice. And like Sarah
Mm-hmm.
was saying, how are you when no one's around? So, how do you sound like when you're talking to your, like she said, your bestie or your kids? Like maybe you talk to your kids a little differently, but yeah, it's like your voice.
When they're being good, I meant, not when they're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
come home.
And then the core message belief system, like what hill are you willing to like fall
Mm-hmm.
on? I don't want to say that because it makes me feel like we're all willing to die for, it's not that, but it's
But
like
but
take a flag in, or yeah,
if you look at
yeah.
it, and I think that's why it's really important, your values and your beliefs
Mm-hmm.
are fundamentally like two incredibly big
Yeah.
pillars of your identity. And that's why even if we get at some point we'll get into like sales psychology and stuff and how we can connect to
Hmm.
our audience's identity because your people are willing. Like
Yeah,
if you
they
have an
are.
identity that this
Oh,
is who I am and someone challenges you, you are
yeah.
willing. There's a lot of bad stuff, people, because they're not willing to be like, oh, wait, maybe my identity, I can shift it, right?
Yeah.
So it is, again, in branding, yes, and in life, someone's
Oh, sure.
identity is like that's why I'm so like jiggy on it because it's like it's incredible how much people will defend, fight, whatever, like and just all like no, that's I mean even because like mother, that is an identity that people will hold on to. Like their kids are up
Hmm.
and grown and it's still I am a mother, and that's why when your kids do
Yeah.
leave the house, there's like this whole like who am I now?
Identity shift. Yeah.
Yeah, it really plays a huge
Yeah.
role in our lives,
And
like
and
incredibly.
what I love to see is how the archetypes show up because archetypes fight different battles. So in our methodology, we have like say the guardian, who's Sara. She's about protecting the people, you know? The challenger, who she like kind of thought she was more like they're disrupting systems. So Sarah's not really doing like I see her and what she does, and she's like for the people, right? Taking a stand for the people. The challengers are like disrupting systems, and I was telling Sara asked a great question in our community about on International Women's Day, like who's someone like you want to honor or, matters to you on International Women's Day. And it was interesting because I'm like, well, my mom's gone and I love my mom and all that, but she kind of made some bad life choices. So I don't know. I still love her though,
Mine
but
too.
I recently watched the movie Harriet. I don't know why I hadn't seen it before. It's been out for a while, and Harriet Tubman was a challenger. She was disrupting systems. She said many times, I mean, I don't know if she said this in real life, but in the movie, she was willing to die and be
Mhm.
captured. Like she didn't care. It was more important for her to take all those people from the South and bring them up to the free North than it was for her to be safe, and that to me, I'm like, wow, she's really living that, like really living it loud. And then like another example would be an oracle who's here really to reveal truth and things. So someone like coming out with, hey, you guys might not know this, but this is and it can rock the boat. We're seeing a lot of truth being revealed all
I
the
would think
time.
there's quite a few like journalists and stuff probably
Yeah,
end up being
exactly.
that kind of archetype.
Yeah. And then the fourth part of it of the brand identity that we are all about is the archetype alignment, not just the core pattern of how you lead, how you create and how you connect with people, but it's more like it's a starting point because when you are like, oh, I'm a guardian, then it explains why certain content feels easy for you and other stuff feels like you're faking it. Like for me, I'm a visionary and I don't need to sound like a strategist to be credible. A strategist is, more on the analytical and like they like plans and structures. So that's why I was like, a lot of times when you follow people who are like, do this with your content system and it should do entertain and educate and all of that, and it would always make my head hurt because I'm like, well, I don't really, that's not how I show up online, and I feel like I'm forcing myself to like perform in a way or share in
And
a way
that's
that,
dangerous though, because then what
yeah,
happens? You just don't show up.
and then I don't show up exactly. Yeah,
Right? So
so
for people trying to build a business, when you're stuck in that internal struggle of like, I want to share my message, but I don't think I'm doing it the right way. And that's why my thing is always no permission, no apology. Like learn, and that's why Dolly Parton's like figure out who you are and be it on purpose. Like and that
mhm.
power of stepping into that. But you're right, because I wanted to be the rebel or the challenger, and I'm like, I'm breaking it all down. And I realized because one of the things we went through in the exercise is look back through your life and have you seen this show up? And when I could see that, and it was like, oh, it's true. I don't break rules. Really, I write my own. And I mean, it just time and time again, way back in my career, like I was like in my 20s, and people were coming to me to be like, because I always spoke up at the boardroom meetings, and they're like, Sarah, can you bring up this? Because they were afraid, but they knew to come to me because if I thought it was
Yeah,
just or there was a
yeah,
wrong being done, I was like, yeah, for sure. Like, that's stupid. Let's talk about it. Like, I'll bring it up. And I did
Yeah.
that throughout my career. And when we were looking at it and you were guiding me, because I was like, I want to be the rebel. Because to me, that identity meant something. I wanted to be, and we'll talk, this is exactly what we're talking about in the
Hmm.
brand voice and tone. Like, I'm aligned to rebels to a certain extent. And so part of me was like, oh, but I want to be that. And who knows down the road, maybe I will become, right? And that's what we talk about archetype and our identity as we grow may morph and shift. But for us to be successful in business, we have to be realistic with who we are right now, right? And finding that out. So 100%. It's such a fascinating topic. I could go for
Yeah.
hours on
I
identity.
know we could talk forever, but I think a couple things maybe we could share is like what happens when your identity is missing or maybe misaligned. I know there's a few things I wanted to share, but you go first, Sarah. What do you think happens when identity is missing or misaligned?
Well, the biggest, if I go big
Hmm.
picture and I pull out,
Hmm.
you will most likely end up giving up and not launch your business
Hmm. Hmm.
because
Hmm.
it's if you're constantly fighting yourself and every move you make, and I mean, it becomes so much easier to turn and find,
Hmm.
delay, distract, distort yourself, go do the dishes. Oh, I'm going to do this. And that's why branding, the visuals, sometimes people get in, but I mean, really, that's not what's going to take your business to the next step. Those are things it's a sticker. You can change those along the way. Not, no, I don't know. A lot of us, most of us are not yet at the guru stage where, because you look at some of the big ones, they're so well known in their identity that that's all they need. People are so connected to it. So for me,
Hmm.
that's the biggest thing. If people are not comfortable enough yet to really like recognize that discomfort and be like, hey, is it that there's a misalignment? I really do
Hmm.
worry that it's going to become too heavy and they're either going to launch something that they hate very soon or they're
Hmm.
just never going to launch. And there's too many beautiful ideas out there that need to come
Yeah.
out. So,
Yeah, I think the main thing I've seen is like people change direction every few months or so
yeah.
because nothing is really sticking, like
Yeah, they pivot.
not feeling it. And I know I was definitely in that cycle for a while when I had my pastel because I thought as a spiritual, I was in the energy medicine field before, and I was like, oh, it needs to be purples and teals and, lavenders and like all these colors like I would never decorate my house with. I would never actually wear. But I thought that's what the vibe of the brand for was to be. And because like I was trying to fit into that mold, I second guessed everything. I was doing a lot of generic kind of content, even though like in my workshops, in my community and stuff, people, we were like, we were a sisterhood and it was strong. It was because they knew me now, you know what I mean? They got a personal experience and they're like, oh, maybe in their mind, they were like, she doesn't fit that brand, but I like her, and that's the hurdle too, is sometimes people will show one thing and then people have an experience of you and they're like, oh, that seems incongruent. And either they love it or they don't love it, right? So that's the mixed
I
mix
think I
signals.
think there is also one little caveat that I would throw into the wheel of this because
Mhm.
if you're launching a business that is faceless, right? Because there are people, it's like lowest hanging fruit. What's my easiest path forward? I have some experience with, and they're not as tied to it. You can, again, you still need an identity for the business. You still need the
Yes.
archetype of the business. But if you're going to run it that way, then because let's say like I'm doing this POD thing and there are people and they all just have like businesses that they have, some of them just don't care about. They're just like, we know it sells, so we're doing it. Not
Mm-hmm.
my style of business, but there are businesses out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if that is the case, then perhaps that personal, because you're faceless, could be different.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
most of the women we work with, most of the women in the collective, most of the
Mm-hmm.
women that we've had the experience with are bringing to life a business that is an extension of themselves.
Yeah,
And that's
for
where that
sure.
really connects. So I just want to make that slight because it's not that we're not saying it's never possible the other way. That's a type
Yeah.
of business that you may choose to run. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's not really who we're speaking to in that sense though. But you do
Even
need a
with big
brand anyway.
brands. Yeah,
Right,
even
yeah.
with big brands like Dove and, you like Jeep, they fit into archetypes,
Yeah.
and but because they've chosen to have the brand represented as a certain type of experience for their
Yeah.
people, whether it's explorer or an innocent brand or caregiver or whatever, that's what they're choosing, and people have that experience of the brands all the time.
Yeah, well, that's part of the identity is that
Consistent.
emotional experience, right? Like if
Yeah.
whatever you show up with, you are like attracts like. To know, like,
Hmm.
and trust, the more similar somebody feels with you, the more they're attracted to you. So if you
Hmm.
are like the Jeep, who's very much
Hmm.
the open roads, no rules, no roads,
Yeah.
right? That for me definitely resonates because I have a bit of explorer definitely festering underneath there too. I don't live it like you do, but I someday want to.
Yeah.
And so I'm very
Yeah.
attracted to those brands. So definitely, definitely, even if it is a faceless, there's such a deep identity to it. It's just easier, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but when you have large companies like that, they're just pumping out social media that they know is going to convert and click. Whereas
Yeah.
in our industry and coaching and healing and all the kind of like, I find the women really are wanting connection. They're wanting to, like you said, a sisterhood where we kind of build together and
Hmm.
grow together. And that's for me really where that, when I talk about that personal transformation required, it's in that type of brand of someone who's like,
Yeah.
I want to extend my arms and help people through something that I've been through.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens when your identity is clear is kind of what we'll kind of summarize it, but I know I stopped feeling like I had to fit into some cookie cutter. I leaned into my natural energy instead of like fighting the quirkiness and the kind of like, like let's go on the road and figure it out as it goes. Like, and also my content, like when I was creating content felt easier for me because I was like my positioning got a little sharp because I knew who I was and I knew what I was here to do. So that really helped. And then the last layer is that the visual piece for me. Once I was like, oh, I'm this feels right, this is who I am, I completely rebranded because I'm like, yeah, no, this is me. I'm not that. And that felt a little easier. What about you with your identity when you became more clear on you? What did you feel?
Yeah, well, I mean, because like most of us entrepreneurs, when we kind of kick in, we pivot in the beginning. It's funny, I've never really drifted too far off though. The core crux
Okay.
of what I've done has always been the same. I've just put different window dressing on it.
Mm-hmm.
That the core of what I did never changed. But my own confidence in being able to stand, and that's why I say branding to me is such a personal transformation and development. Like it was incredible. So I still in my own messaging, I'm like you. I hate lipsticles. I hate like do this so you can. It's just I'm like I can get that anywhere. Like
Yeah.
for me, it's that deeper. It's that pull to the identity. It's stepping into. So definitely, I have very few qualms now. Like if I'm going to post, I'm confident enough in myself to be like, no, this is the message I really feel needs to be done. If it's not the right one, cool, I'll make another piece. So I'll just group it up to say, like, when I finally was, okay, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I'm in it for the long haul. It took a lot of weight of performance, of trying to follow everybody's everything like, oh, what are they doing, which is so really it's so silly because when I taught for a while at George Brown University and it was in design and I would always go in there like, what's trending, I was like, people do not realize that trends start with somebody. Be the trend maker, not the trend follower. And it's so funny when you come back and you can look at it and go like, that's why I always say we know all these things. Everything we need to know, we already do. Sometimes we just need that, like you said, that flashlight shone on it a little
Mm-hmm.
differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a huge piece for me to be able to give myself permission, not get it
Mm-hmm.
from anybody else, but give myself permission to be like, no, this is who I am and this is the path I'm choosing in my values, in my beliefs, in the experience I want people to have with me. And that's what it allowed me to by really owning that I'm okay the way I am. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
need other people to be like, hey, you should be this. It really, it just kind of like cut the tape on the door and was like, let's go. Let's just enjoy this. Because entrepreneurship, as tough as it is, I also believe it should be fun. It should
Yeah.
be really a great experience where you're
Yeah.
connecting and helping, and it not all the bells and whistles that we're constantly like with social media. It's like it's a beautiful thing to get to support people and ourselves.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think that, unless you have anything to add, that feels like it really wraps up a nice talk about brand identity.
Yeah, as I said, for
Yeah,
me, if people leave here understanding that it's not just superficial, it really it's your why, it's your purpose, it's your tone, it's the experience, it's your values, it's your beliefs. Like if you're in the mix and it's not going the way you want to, take a good look and be like, do I need to come back to basics and really look at who I am in my brand, right? Because if that
yeah,
first piece is wobbly, everything
yeah.
else after can also then be, compounding on the wobble. So everything gets wobbly.
Exactly. It's the foundation, as we said in the beginning of this. We're circling
Hmm.
back around, closing the loop. Well, next week we're tackling positioning. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Because once you know who you are, you need to know where you stand. And no, it's not just a clever tagline that most people think is positioning. So we're excited to go into that in our next episode. And we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Drop a comment. Also, if you want to take our art print quiz and get your code name, we would love to know. And, reply in the comments. Let us know your archetypal code name. We're the visionary and the guardian here.
Guardian.
And, also if you're willing to share maybe where you're stuck on identity, if you have any questions we didn't answer that or wasn't clear to you, we'd love to help you out there and share this if any of it resonated with you. We'd love for you to share.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll drop the link if you want to take the quiz and find out. And like Nicole said, really, if there's topics you want or anything, agree or disagree, we're good on all of it. You don't have to agree with us. We love a good conversation. So whatever you're vibing with, we I think the core thing is we'd love to hear and connect with you guys. So
Most definitely. And thank you for being here with us. We love it. Even though we can't see you, we feel you.
okay,
See you
everybody,
next
we'll see you
time.
next week.